Spencer Cannon.
All rise for the jury.
Thank you. Please be seated. We'll go on the record in the matter of State of Utah versus Martin MacNeill. He is present with his counsel. The state's attorneys are also present. The jury is seated. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. I trust you all had an opportunity to vote this morning. We have been working together this morning so that we can move the trial forward expeditiously. My proposal is that we just go essentially 4 hours today. We'll have a short break at about 1 o'clock or so. Halfway through that, we won't take a lunch break. I think you have some snacks to eat in the jury room, and that way we get 4 hours of work accomplished today. Will that cause any of you difficulty, physically or otherwise? Okay. You may call your first witness.
State calls Spencer Cannon.
Mr. Cannon, if you'll come up to the clerk's desk right here, please raise your right hand and be sworn. Thank you. If you'll be seated here.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Will you please state your name?
My name is Spencer Cannon.
And for the record, how do you spell your last name?
C-A-N-N-O-N.
Mr. Cannon, how are you employed?
Currently, I work for the Utah County Sheriff's Office.
And what is your position?
I'm a sergeant and a supervisor in our patrol division.
Can you briefly describe your duties as a supervisor?
I have a team with 4 deputies that I supervise. I am currently assigned on a traffic enforcement team. We do drug and alcohol and DUI enforcement in Utah County, primarily in the unincorporated areas of the county, but assisting other agencies when called upon.
Okay. How long have you been a law enforcement officer?
23 years.
And as part of that, did you attend POST?
Yes, I did.
And POST is what?
It's the Peace Officer Standards and Training. It's the police academy.
Okay. Have you continued in your training with respect to how to function as a police officer and so forth?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever been employed as a medical examiner investigator?
Yes.
And when was that?
I began that employment in, I believe it was the summer of 2000, and worked part-time in that position until, I believe it was 2008.
Was that for the Utah State Medical Examiner?
The State Health Department, the Office of the Medical Examiner, yes.
Okay. And you mentioned that that was part-time. Can you describe how part-time that was?
I was an investigator assigned in Utah County. There were 3 of us at the time who were employed in the same way that I was, and we would alternate weeks on call. So 1 out of every 3 weeks I would be on call as an investigator for the medical examiner.
And what does an investigator for the medical examiner do?
We respond anytime there's a death under suspicious circumstances, unattended death, or unknown circumstances, suicide, homicide, anything like that. Or it's just unexplained circumstances, then we respond and gather information for the chief medical examiner.
And what's the purpose of gathering the information?
The main purpose of our presence or involvement in any case is to help determine cause and manner of death, and that's the information we gather is designed to do that.
And are there certain parties that you speak to or interview, or describe how you go about trying to determine cause and manner?
Other than responding to the scene or to where the body is, we'll talk to the law enforcement officers that might be involved. We'll talk to any medical people involved, nurses or doctors, any witnesses that may have seen what happened. We don't always get that information directly. Sometimes we collect that information third party by others who have spoken to them, primarily law enforcement or the medical professionals.
With respect to the deceased, the body of the individual you're looking into, what do you do with that body?
conduct a physical examination, conduct an examination of anything around the body. It would depend also on whether I respond to the scene where the death occurred or where an accident occurred. In some cases, where the person dies is different from where they may have been found. If there's medical assistance that's rendered, they may be at the hospital by the time I become involved. But we look at the body to see if there's anything that might give us an indication of what the cause and manner of death are. Anything around the body or in the area where the body is found to give us those indications. And it can be physical evidence, it can be witness testimony, anything like that.
Okay. I would imagine with respect to an autopsy, it's the forensic pathologist that performs that.
Yes, the medical doctor, yes.
Okay. I'm going to take you to the date of April 11th, 2007. Do you recall that date generally?
Yes, I do.
Did you have occasion to investigate the death of Michele Marie MacNeill?
Yes, I did.
Can you explain what you did?
I was on call that week. I received a page at the time. I carried a pager, and that's how I was notified. The page came through Utah County Dispatch. I was instructed to contact Dr. Van Wagner at the emergency room at American Fork Hospital and respond there that there had been a death and that I was to investigate that.
Okay. Did you make contact with Dr. Van Wagner?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you at any point make contact with Christy Daniels?
I don't recall that I did.
Doug Daniels?
I don't recall that I did.
Angie Aguilar?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Do you recall ever speaking to an Alexis Summers or Alexis MacNeill?
I did not.
Rachel MacNeill?
No.
Okay. What about Eileen Heng?
No.
Okay. You indicated that you spoke with Dr. Van Wagner, and what was the result of your investigation? What did you do?
I spoke to Dr. Van Wagner, and he told me what the circumstances were that he encountered, that Mrs. MacNeill had been brought to the emergency room by ambulance, that she was in full arrest. CPR was in progress, resuscitative efforts were being made, but after a period of time it became apparent that they were not going to be successful and she was pronounced dead. I questioned him about what he knew of the circumstances. I also spoke to an officer who had been at the scene and got some information about what they found initially at the scene. And I did an examination of the body in the emergency room. It wasn't directly in the emergency room. She had been moved to a side room by the time I arrived. I looked at the body and I gathered information about what I asked Dr. Van Wagner what he thought could have contributed to this death, and I put that information together.
Okay. You ultimately prepared a report?
Yes.
And what happened with Michelle's body? That was
after part of my procedure is to contact the transport agency that we used. It was a company called IPS, Independent Professional Services. They're a funeral and crematory service, and they are the ones that were under contract with the medical examiner's office at the time for transporting the bodies of deceased persons to the medical examiner's office in Salt Lake. So I contacted them, and after I conducted my examination, I waited there at the hospital until they arrived, and then I released the body to the transport agency.
okay. Did you have occasion to report to the home where she was found?
I did not.
Pleasant Grove?
I did not.
Did you in fact follow protocol?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And you've been working as a liaison with the medical examiner's office, well, as of April 11, 2007. How long had you been working as a liaison with the ME's office?
About almost 7 years at that point.
And you had contact with some of the investigators in this case, right?
Well, Dr. Van Wagner and then one of the police officer investigators, yes.
And you sent an email to him about your recollections of April 11, 2007?
I don't recall that I sent an email. I'm not saying I didn't. I don't remember sending an email to anybody. That would be outside of what I normally did. I usually prepared a report, and then if I had photographs, I would email those to the medical examiner's office, and then I would fax a copy of my report, which usually consisted of 3 pages and a cover sheet, to the medical examiner's office. I didn't usually get involved with email other than to send photographs. So with any other investigators, I don't recall that I did that.
I'm referring to February 7th of 2011.
Okay.
I sent it in an email. Does that ring a bell to you?
It doesn't at this point, no.
You may.
Okay, I remember sending this now. I haven't reviewed this since that time, but I do remember sending this now to Jeff Robinson with the Utah County Attorney's Office.
Right, and you're free to review it.
Okay. Okay.
You now remember sending an email on February 7th of 2011 to Investigator Robinson?
That refreshes my memory. Yes, I do.
And you indicated that, well, you don't recall whether or not you were notified by the emergency room staff or the investigative agency in relation to Michele MacNeill's passing, correct?
I can say with certainty that it was not the ER staff. That I don't remember that ever happening. I got calls almost always from Utah County Dispatch for notification on these cases. On rare occasions, I got a call directly from the police agency involved, but it was almost always by page.
Okay. And from your experience in working in your position with the sheriff's office and with the medical examiner's office, the ER staff works people after arrival if they believe that there's a sense of viability in the patient, correct?
That's, I believe, the reason they do it most of the time. I've seen other circumstances where it was obvious that the person was not going to survive, but they continued to work them, mostly out of concern for family. I had a case once where a 2-year-old was kicked by a horse, and it was obvious he was going to die, and they worked him for several hours waiting for a father to come from California. But most of the time, there's procedural things, and they want to confer with each other to make sure that they're making the wrong decision before they discontinue resuscitative efforts, even though it appears obvious even to an untrained eye that survivability is not likely.
And in fact, that's what you indicate in your email, that in your experience, the ER staff doesn't work people if there is no chance of viability, except in cases mostly young children.
Yes.
And in this case, there was no report to you by the emergency room that Michele had experienced any lividity or rigor prior to her arrival at the ER, correct?
Correct, yes.
And from your opinion, from the circumstances that you were aware of, you didn't find anything overtly suspicious in this case, correct?
That's correct, yes.
That's all the questions I have. Thanks.
Mr. Cannon, the protocol that you followed, is that established by the medical examiner's office?
Yes,
Okay. You indicated that you did not find anything overtly suspicious.
that's correct.
Is that because of your examination of the body?
Yes.
Okay. If you had interviewed witnesses that were on the scene that found Michele and learned that the defendant had described her position of the body different from what the witnesses observed, would that have raised suspicion in your mind?
That would have been unusual.
Speculation and I think mischaracterization of the evidence.
Overruled. I think the defense opened the door to his opinion about nothing being overtly suspicious. I'm unclear how the evidence has been mischaracterized. In what way does the question mischaracterize evidence?
I don't believe that there's any evidence that contradicts the way Mr. MacNeill said that he found the body when he initially found it.
Okay, overruled. You may continue.
Mr. Cannon, if you had learned that the defendant here, Martin MacNeill, a doctor, had told the 911 dispatcher that he was in the process of performing CPR 2 times on 911 calls, but in fact could not have performed CPR, would that have raised any suspicion in your mind?
That would have.
If you had learned that the defendant, a doctor, who was in charge of giving breaths to the deceased once she was removed from the bathtub, if you were informed that her chest was not rising during those breaths, would that have caused you any alarm or raised suspicion in your mind?
That would have seemed unusual, yes.
If you had learned that the defendant had thrown out a number of narcotics, levels of which these particular narcotics were found in the decedent's system at autopsy, and then told another person that the police might have taken them, would that have raised suspicion in your mind?
That would have, yes.
If you had learned that approximately 1 week earlier the defendant, a doctor, had given the decedent a number of CNS depressants which left her unresponsive and otherwise incoherent for several hours, and that the majority of these drugs that had been administered to her were later found in her system at autopsy, would that have raised suspicion in your mind?
Yes.
If you had learned at the time of the decedent's death, the defendant, Michele's husband, the decedent's husband, was having an affair with a woman, and approximately 2 weeks later moved that individual in under the guise that she was the nanny for the children, would that have raised suspicion in your mind?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further redirect? Or recross, excuse me.
If you had learned that many of the witnesses that were reporting these facts that the prosecution just discussed with you had reasons to misstate the facts, would that have mitigated some of your suspicion?
It may have, yes.
That's all the questions I have.
Anything else?
Nothing further.
May Mr. Cannon be released from his trial subpoena?
Yes, Judge.
Any objection?
No objection.
Very good. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you have questions for this witness, any of you? Doesn't look like it. You may step down. Thank you. No jury questions. You may call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state calls inmate number 3. And we may need a minute, Your Honor, to bring him down.
Do you know how long that will take?
If I got a minute, I'll find out.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay. Counsel, will you approach the bench? Sir, if you would come forward to the witness stand, would you raise your right hand as best you can and take an oath?
You do solemnly swear the testimony you shall give in this testimony you will follow be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Please be seated here.
We approach the record.
You may.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for being here.
All right.
We've discussed previously that we're going to refer to you as inmate number 3. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You appear to be in custody today.
Yes, sir.
Are you currently imprisoned?
Yes, sir.
What for?
Drugs.
Okay. Have you been convicted of felonies?
Yes, sir.
Okay. One or multiple?
One.
Okay. One conviction for one felony, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's related to drugs.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever know Martin MacNeill?
Yes, sir.
Will you tell us how you met him?
At Texarkana Federal Prison.
Okay. How did you come across his path? Or
The first time I met him was I was standing off in the they call it a chicken coop. It's like 18-man cell,
okay.
and that's where I met him at.
Okay. So is it kind of like a dormitory, or how
Yes,
would you describe it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And its nickname was the chicken coop.
Yes, sir.
Were you in there with him?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you guys become friendly?
Yes, sir.
How did that happen?
I work out a lot, and he used to ask me a lot of questions about working out, and then sooner or later we started working out together.
Okay. About how long were you in the chicken coop together?
I was there about 2 weeks. I don't know how long he was in there.
Okay. After Did you leave first or did he leave first?
I did.
Okay, so after you left, you went to a different cell or a different dormitory?
No, we were still in the same dormitory. I just went right downstairs to cell 24.
Okay, so let me clarify. A dormitory has multiple cells in it?
Yes, sir.
And each cell has multiple inmates?
Yes, sir.
All right. And the one where you met Martin was nicknamed the chicken coop?
Yes, sir.
After a couple of weeks, you were moved to a different one downstairs?
Yes, sir.
All right, thanks. Did you continue talking to Mr.
Yes.
MacNeill?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did he have a nickname?
Doc,
Okay. Do you know why he had that nickname?
because he said he was a doctor out in the world. Everybody around there called him Doc.
Okay. How often would you say you worked out together?
About 3-4 times a week.
And for how long?
About a real long time, I guess, basically up until like a month or two before he left.
Okay. Do you recall when that was, when he left?
I think it was over a year ago. I know it was probably like in the summertime.
Okay,
So I say like, I guess 2010, something like that. 2010, 11.
you say about a year ago, that'd be 2012?
Yeah, 2012, 2011, something like that. I know it was over a year ago whenever he left.
Okay, all right. And from the time he got there to about the time he left, you worked out with him about 3 or 4 times a week, is that what
Yeah.
you're saying? Okay.
Ran,
what's that?
jogged, ran, everything.
Okay, I was just gonna ask, what kind of workouts did you do?
Push-ups, jog. Normal track is 3/4 of a lap is a mile, and 2/4 of a lap is on the outside of the track. On the big track is a mile. So most of the time we ran on the big track on the outside of on the grass.
Okay, and about how, would you run with Doc?
Yeah,
And how far would you run?
about 4 to 5 miles a day.
Okay. Did he ever have any trouble doing that?
No, sir.
Could he keep up with you?
No, I couldn't keep up with him.
You couldn't keep up with him?
Yeah.
Okay. How about when it comes to push-ups and other exercises you did?
Push-ups, bench, curls, dips, sprints.
And did he keep up with you pretty well on those?
Yes, sir.
Okay. About how many would you say you can do?
Me, I can do about 40 to 50 push-ups.
Okay,
Depends on what kind of mood I'm in.
sure. Okay. Did you ever notice Doc have any physical ailments, any problems with his body?
No, sir.
Okay. Did you ever talk to Doc about his wife?
Couple of times. I mean, like I told you, well, like I told other investigators, prosecutor, the first time I ever heard of Doc's wife was when I first met him off in the chicken coop, and I asked him what he was locked up for, and obviously I can't talk about that, but I asked him what he was locked up for, and he said him and his wife was locked up, so at the time I thought that his wife was still alive.
Okay.
So,
Did you later find out who that woman was that he was talking about?
yes, sir.
How did you find that out?
From the pictures and from also on the TV, they said her name was Dipsy or Gypsy or something like that.
Okay. Let's talk about what you've seen. Did you ever read a magazine article about Doc?
Well, I glanced at it because by the time I got to it, most of it was tore out of the magazine. Because I used to work in the leisure library at the prison. But I didn't really get to read the article.
Do you recall what magazine it was?
I think it was People's.
And you said they had an article on Doc, but you glanced at it?
Yeah, because the whole article wasn't, there were just bits and pieces of it because somebody had tore it out.
Okay. Did you talk to Doc about that article?
Yes, sir.
What'd you talk to him about?
Well, I just asked him, I said, Doc, they say you murdered your wife. And he was like, no, I didn't murder my wife. If I did, they don't have any evidence, so, you know, and I was like, well, Doc, they said that you murdered. He was like, nah, I'm finna go home. They don't have any evidence.
What else did he say about evidence against him?
Nothing really, except that they didn't have any evidence and that they couldn't prove anything.
Okay. Did that subject come up at other times?
Another time it came up whenever he went to unit team, and
Tell us what that is.
unit team is whenever you go to like case manager or counselor, and it has to be two of them present up in the room with you. And
What's the purpose of that meeting?
well, it's held every 6 months, and whenever you get close to going home, they agree or not agree on giving you a halfway house.
Okay. And halfway house, what's that?
It's a, how you say it, it's a living place that you live at for 6 months or however long that they give you out in society until you get used to society, I guess, to get you back used to society.
Okay, so is it inside the prison or out?
No, sir, it's out.
Are you still supervised?
Yes, sir.
When you're in the halfway house, let me ask you a better question. If someone goes to the halfway house, are they still supervised?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's not like they're totally free, but they're on their way.
Yes, sir.
Okay. You said the subject came up another time during one of these unit teams.
Yes, sir.
Will you describe what happened?
Well, I wasn't there, like I told you, I wasn't there whenever he went to unit team, but I was sitting at the table whenever he came down the hallway, and he had this, this mad look on his face, and I was like, Doc, what's wrong? He was like, my fucking daughters, oh, excuse my language, but my effing daughters and my,
What's your objection?
May we approach, I think, it's in relation to the...
You may.
So you mentioned he came out of the, I'm sorry, I can't remember, it's team unit or unit?
unit team.
Unit team.
Yes, sir.
He came out of unit team, he was upset, he said something about his daughters, and then after that, what did he talk about?
And he said that they didn't give him no halfway house because of his effing daughters and because of his B of a wife, And I was like, whoa, Doc, you talking ill of the dead, you know what I'm saying? And he was like, he just got this look on his face like he don't want to talk about it anymore and walked off.
I don't want to be crude, but when you say a B of a wife, what do you mean by that?
He called her a bitch.
Okay. You mentioned seeing the woman that Doc referred to as his wife, whether her name was Dipsy or Gypsy.
Yes, sir.
You said you saw her on TV. Will you describe what you saw on television about that?
Kind of a heavy-set lady with long hair,
Okay.
dark hair.
Okay. And how did you learn of her name?
Right there on TV, and Doc had mentioned her a couple of times, though.
Okay.
Because at first, like I said, when I first met him, that's who I thought his wife was. I didn't know his wife was dead.
Okay. And why did you think that's who his wife was?
Because whenever he told me what he was locked up for, he said him and his wife was locked up. So that didn't mean that she's dead.
So
To
he
me, it
referred to
did.
this woman as his wife.
Yes, sir.
Did you ever see Doc stressed out?
A few times.
You've described one when he came back from unit team.
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you about when it was coming time for him to be released.
Mm-hmm.
How did he appear to you at that time?
Objection, Your Honor, relevance and speculation.
So, Do you need to speak to that?
I can ask a different question if I'll rephrase it.
The objection is moot. The question's withdrawn. Go ahead.
You said you saw Doc stressed out.
Yes, sir.
What did he look like when he was stressed out?
Oh, mean. Mean. Most of the time, mean. Or if you get on the wrong subject with him, it was like,
Sustained.
Okay. Let's talk about the weeks before his release. Did you see Doc at that time?
yes, sir.
You still working out with him?
Yes, sir.
Do you still appear to be pretty healthy?
Yes, sir.
You appear to be stressed?
A little bit.
Did he talk about what he was stressed about?
No, sir.
In the weeks before he was released, did he say anything to you about what might have been on his mind?
No, sir.
Okay. If I could have 1 minute, Your Honor.
You may.
I'll tend to the witness, Your Honor.
You may cross-examine.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
You received a 27-year sentence for your
Yes, sir.
felony conviction, right?
Yes, sir.
And how far into that sentence are you now?
Going on 14 years.
Still have a long time to go.
Yes, sir. 10 years.
And you've testified here today that you saw a magazine article about Mr. MacNeill,
Yes, sir.
and you talked to him about it, right?
Yes, sir. But I didn't see the whole magazine order because it was tore all up.
And you specifically asked him if he murdered his wife, right?
Yes, sir. I think I did.
And he responded to you, "No, man, no," right?
No, he didn't say no, man, no. He just said if they had any proof that he did it, that he wouldn't be there and he's fixing to go home. And he did say no.
You may.
You can't get your hands up.
No, sir. Where we at?
Is it all right if
Are we picking him up on the record? Okay, yeah.
Do you recall being interviewed at the Texarkana jail in January of 2013?
Yes, sir.
And you recall Investigator Robinson
Yes, sir.
talking with you? And you met with him in an interview room?
Yes,
right?
sir.
And he asked you questions about your interactions with Mr. MacNeill?
Yes, sir.
And you gave honest and truthful answers?
Yes, sir.
All right. And if you turn to page 2.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
And so when you asked him if he murdered his wife, you told Investigator Robinson that Mr. MacNeill responded, "No, man, no," right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I remember that.
So
Okay,
that's
yes.
what you said.
Yes, sir.
All right. And in fact,
I thought you was talking about, a while ago when you asked me that question, I thought you was talking about as far as whenever I asked him right after I'd seen the magazine article.
okay. At any rate, you asked him a number of times.
Yes, sir, a couple
whether
of
he
times.
murdered his wife, right?
Yes, sir.
And every time he said, "No, man, no."
This time he said, no, man, no.
And on another occasion that you talked about in here, he said, "No, he didn't murder his wife."
Yes, sir.
And then after he said, "No, he didn't murder his wife," that was when he told you that there's no evidence to prove it, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if Mr. MacNeill wasn't working out with you, you indicated that he would work out with an inmate named Bruce.
Yes, sir.
Any other inmates that you recall him working out with? No, sir. And you indicated that you and Mr. MacNeill would also walk on the track together,
No, we would run.
run on the track?
Yes.
Do you recall him being on the track with any other inmates other than you?
Me, Bruce,
Could you approach? Or
In your interview with the investigators, the only people that you indicated that Mr. MacNeill worked out with was you and
Yes, sir.
And in relation to his friends, you indicated that the only friends that you were aware of was Bruce and Stan.
Yes, sir.
And you also indicated in your interview that, that Mr. MacNeill, you observed that he was lopsided on one side, right?
No, I said that sometime he acted like that. His shoulder was hurting him, and he would walk kind of like, you know.
You may.
Refresh my memory.
So in your interview, you indicated that he was
Okay.
lopsided on one side, right?
Yes, sir.
You indicated that he was kind of crooked on one side,
Yes, sir.
and you indicated that you think he's kind of walking crooked,
Yes, sir.
right?
Right here.
And you indicated that he had bad feet.
It's there, but I can't remember saying that.
Okay. You don't dispute it, though?
No, sir. It's there, but I just don't remember saying it.
And you recall that everybody at the prison had seen the stories about Mr. MacNeill on TV and in the magazine?
I can't speak for everybody else, but I know that the people that was there whenever I walked up and they was watching it, yes.
And in your interview, you indicated that, that everybody had seen it, right?
Objection, hearsay.
I can't speak for everybody else, sir, because I don't know who I was watching TV. I know when I walked up, those people that was sitting there in the TV area, they was watching it.
Let me stop you. Overruled. It's impeachment. The answer will stand. Go ahead.
And you knew that that it had been on TV as well as in the magazine, right?
Yes, sir.
And do you also recall having a discussion with Mr. MacNeill about the narrator on the TV show?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember, was that TV show with Nancy Grace?
I can't remember which show it was. I know it was probably on HLN or MSNBC, one of them.
And in the interview, you indicated that Mr. MacNeill was upset because the narrator was accusing him of not giving mouth to mouth, right?
No, sir. If I can remember, it was.
You want to just look at what you said
Okay.
in the
That's
interview?
what I really was saying. That's what I was going to tell you about. I didn't say mouth to mouth. I said, how was he? I said that he was upset because the narrator was saying, how was he giving CPR? And he was on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty tough to get CPR when 911 is keeping you on the phone, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. Unless you got some headgear.
Overruled. It's fair cross. Go ahead.
And Mr. MacNeill was upset that he was being accused of doing things wrong, right?
Yes, sir.
You've worked as an informant for law enforcement in the past, correct?
Yes, sir.
And after you were incarcerated, you continued to attempt to work as an informant, correct?
No, sir. I contacted the U.S. attorney and asked if I could give information that I had known about. Yes, sir.
And in November, October, November of 2002, you contacted your law enforcement contact about an inmate named Thompson.
Yes, sir.
And you told your contact that that wanted to make a hit on a United States attorney, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you then arranged for a phone call between your contact and purportedly Thompson.
Yes, sir. It was a stage phone call.
It was a staged phone call.
Yes, sir.
And then things didn't go as planned with the phone call, did they?
Well, the simple reason things didn't go plan with the phone call was because the information that I had gave panned out, and the agent that I was assigned to told me that before they go and as far as arrest these people, that they would move me off of the compound that I was on. They did not move me off of the compound that I was on, and that's why I came up with that story right there.
Yeah, you made up a story about Thompson, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you even stabbed yourself and then blamed it on Thompson, didn't you?
I didn't stab myself. I nicked myself with a razor, but yes, sir.
You nicked yourself, and you accused Thompson of stabbing you.
Yes, sir. For safety precautions, because I had to get off that compound, because the guys that I had informed on had people there that used to work for them, and I had told them that, and they told me that they would move me off that compound before they bust those guys, and they did not move me off that compound before they busted those guys.
Your scheme actually was a little bit bigger than that, wasn't it? You even involved other inmates that also were trying to say that Thompson was wanting to do a hit on a United States attorney, correct?
Other inmates? No, sir.
Yes. And the other inmates were going to corroborate your story about Thompson stabbing you rather than...
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And so you asked other inmates to lie for you as well.
Yes, sir. To get me off the compound. Yes, sir, I did.
Yeah. And you even incorporated other inmates into your story about Thompson allegedly wanting to make a hit on somebody else.
Yes, sir, I did.
And ultimately, you were confronted by FBI agents, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you ultimately admitted that you made everything up about Thompson allegedly wanting to make a hit, correct?
Yes, sir, I did, to get off the compound. Yes, sir, I did. I admitted that I made the story up because I had to get off of that compound. Yes, sir.
Actually, what you admitted to was that you made the story up so that you could be able to testify against him and get time off of your sentence. Is what
No,
you
sir.
said, right?
No, sir.
So you made up an elaborate murder for hire scheme just so that you could get a transfer?
This is what it is, sir. I made up the story because they told me that they would get me off the compound after I informed on the people. They did not get me off the compound before they went and busted those guys. They told me that they would get me off the compound before they went and busted those guys. They didn't, so I had to come up with that scheme for them to lock me up and get me off the compound. Once they got me back, I acknowledged and told the FBI agents that I made up that story to get off of the compound. Yes, sir.
That's not quite the way it played out, though, is it? You maintained your story for a couple weeks before you ultimately fessed up to it being a lie. Right?
No, sir. I maintained my story until I'd seen the FBI agents.
And up until that time, you had continued to lie about Thompson allegedly wanting to make a hit on the U.S. attorney, right?
I mean, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm telling you that I maintained my story until the FBI agents came and got me. I was in the whole special housing assignment until they came and got me. I did not get to see nobody for a couple of weeks until I talked to the FBI agents.
And you called the assistant U.S. attorney that the hit was allegedly going to be made on a bitch, correct?
A bitch? No, sir, I did not call her a bitch.
You were ultimately administered even a polygraph examination about
Yes, sir.
your allegations.
Yes, sir.
And it was after that that you then fessed up that you had made up the whole thing, right?
I fessed up before and after.
And so would you dispute the statement that Vaughn stated he set up the whole scenario because he felt he could potentially reduce his current sentence?
Yes, sir. I dispute that because they had already told me that the information that I had gave them had panned out, so I was going to get a sentence reduced anyway. So, I mean...
But you don't dispute that Vaughn also...
Can we approach, please?
What's your objection? Objection.
It's based on the court's ruling about the media.
And minors.
So would you dispute the statement that you also stated that the alleged stabbing that occurred against you by Thompson on November 8, 2002 was also fabricated?
Yes, sir. Are you asking me was that statement that I made was true, or are you asking me did I make up that statement?
You don't dispute the fact that you made up?
Oh, no, sir, I don't dispute it.
You understand that that by informing on somebody while you're in prison has the potential to reduce your sentence, correct?
No, sir, because I wasn't promised anything.
Well, you understand as an inmate that if you provide substantial cooperation to law enforcement, that under the federal sentencing guidelines, there's a chance that you can get your sentence reduced, correct?
I understand that if I help out in a federal investigation, I can. But this is not a federal investigation. This is a state investigation, right?
I'm asking the questions here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So as an inmate, you understood that by providing information to law enforcement, you could potentially get a reduction in your sentence, correct?
On what? On this case or?
I'm sorry,
No,
there's
I'm
an
just-
objection. The objection sustained. It has been asked and answered.
That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Any redirect for this witness?
Something, this story about Thompson, because it's the first time I've heard it.
Yes, sir.
Are you saying that the story about the hit on the U.S. attorney was fabricated, or did that
Yes,
come
sir.
out?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let me clarify my question. The information that you were giving about a hit on the U.S. attorney, was that fake or was that true?
It was fabricated, sir.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask you about your friends, or excuse me, about Doc's friends. Did he get along well with others in your cell or in your dormitory?
Yes, sir.
Did he help others with medical issues?
Yes, sir.
You've talked about seeing a little bit in the People magazine. You've talked a little bit about seeing some on TV.
Yes, sir.
The stuff that you've talked about today about the conversations you had with Doc about his wife, did they come from People magazine or did they come from Doc himself?
Doc,
How about the stuff on the TV? What you've talked about today, did that come from the TV or from Doc?
the stuff on the TV, we narrated between each other about the stuff on the TV as far as what the operator said. But, I mean,
What you're saying that Doc told you, did he tell you that or is that something you got from the TV?
no, that is nothing that I got from the TV. I wouldn't travel all this way and say, oh, I said this or Doc said this, just to lie, because my life is already in danger anyway.
Did Doc tell you, well, Let's talk about that a minute. What do you mean your life is in danger already?
Well, off and snitch.
I'm sorry.
Relevance, and he's already answered the question.
I don't believe he has.
Overruled as to asked and answered, overruled as to relevance. His truthfulness has been impeached. He may be rehabilitated.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
You said your life's in danger. Let me ask you about snitches. Do you know what a snitch is?
Yes, sir.
Will you describe to us what is a snitch?
What I'm doing now, I'm telling you what I know, and that's against prison code.
Okay, and what do you refer to prison code? What does that mean?
Prison code is you don't snitch, you don't fool with gays, and you don't steal.
What happens to snitches in prison if you're found out?
Whatever.
Overruled. He may testify if he knows.
The 14 years almost that I've been locked up, I've seen snitches get killed. I've seen snitches get stabbed. I've seen snitches get isolated. I've seen snitches get raped. All type of stuff. I can't say what would happen to me because I don't know, but I know some would.
Have you been, has any other inmate talked to you about coming here today? Have you been threatened at all?
Yes, sir.
Well, what happened there?
Well, the institution made a mistake and put our names on a pack-out list. And pack-out is whenever you pack up and you get ready to go back to court or whatever. Instead of them calling us up front because they know the situation, they put us on a pack-out list, and it's just right there on the wall. And everybody knew that a lot of inmates had been interviewed, and everybody knew that really basically that the reason us 3 people was on the pack-out list was because we was coming to testify.
Are you nervous about going back?
Yes, sir.
What about being in the Utah County Jail while you're out here? Has this been a nice vacation for you?
No, not really.
Sustained.
Let me ask you, when it comes to your willingness to be here in Utah and testify, do you have more privileges and comforts here or in federal prison?
In federal prison.
Did you ever talk to Doc about how his wife died?
Yes, sir.
Did he ever say anything about how his wife died?
The only thing he said that she had drowned.
Were you and Doc friends?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever have a time where things got rough between you?
No, sir. Just whenever I ask him questions or something, just like you seen another side of me, get mad or don't want to talk about it.
Did you guys ever have a falling out where you became enemies?
No, sir.
When he left, how did you feel toward each other?
I was glad he was going home.
Okay. Because you didn't want him around anymore, or just because you were happy for him?
No, I'm glad to see anybody go home.
But were you angry at him?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you have something against him now?
No, sir.
Have you received any special treatment from prosecutors in this case for what you're doing today?
No, sir.
Testifying? Have you received anything from federal authorities?
No, sir.
Is your sentence being shortened at all?
No, sir.
Are you being paid?
No, sir.
Do you have promises that will, I guess, ripen, or do you have, have we made you promises for when you're done testifying that you'll get something?
No, sir.
Are you aware that if you're lying today, you could be prosecuted here?
Yes, sir.
You'd be prosecuted for felony perjury?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you aware that if you're lying about what Doc told you, you could be obstructing justice?
Yes, sir.
We'd prosecute you for a felony for that?
Yes, sir.
You still say your testimony is true?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any recross?
Your testimony, as it's been refreshed, was that when you asked Mr. MacNeill if he had killed his wife, he said, "No man, no," right?
Yes, sir.
And you're not seeking any consideration from the state in this case?
No, sir.
And on the TV shows and the magazine that you saw and read about Mr. MacNeill, there was discussion about Mrs. MacNeill, his wife, drowning, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's all the question.
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
You've been asked a couple of times about Doc's statement, "No man, no," when you asked if he killed his wife.
Yes, sir.
Do you remember how he finished that sentence out?
He was like, they don't have any evidence, they don't have any proof.
Mr. Spencer just asked if you're seeking any consideration, if you're seeking anything in exchange for your testimony.
Yes, sir.
If you get something beneficial out of this, would you refuse it?
No, sir, I wouldn't refuse it, but I wouldn't ask for it.
And you haven't asked for it?
No, sir.
To your knowledge, have we offered anything to you for it?
No, sir.
Why are you here?
Because I got something to say, and it's the truth.
Thank you very much. Let me ask you, do you have any questions for inmate number 3? 1. Would you approach? Sir, you stated in your testimony that some information you gave in 2002 panned out. What do you mean by that?
Well, basically, I didn't mean to say some, I meant to say all. And the reason I said it panned out is because everything that I said, not only did it get the 2 guys that they asked me about and investigated me, asked me about and investigated them on, it got, I think it was a total of 26 people put in prison.
And did you get a reduction in your sentence for that information?
No, sir.
Do you have follow-up questions?
Yes. When I asked you whether what you were saying was made up, you said it was made up. And now you're saying that the information you gave actually led to arrests. Is that correct?
Sir, excuse me. Sir, you asked me, did I make up the allegations of, as far as the prosecutor and me, as far as being cut? And I said yes. But the information that I gave them panned out.
Okay. So the information that you were saying is made up was to get you off the compound. It's the fake stabbing or whatever.
That's the only thing, sir.
But the cooperation you were giving to police, that was all true and correct.
It panned out 100%.
Do you have questions? Go ahead.
Yes. That cooperation was before you received your federal sentence, correct?
No, sir.
You have 26 people or something like that.
No, sir. I got my sentence, then I got sent to Oklahoma Transfer Center. And that's when the investigators came to see me, and I gave them the information. So I had got my sentence.
Okay. So it was just after you got your sentence?
Yes, sir.
That's all the questions I have.
No further questions.
May inmate 3 be released from his trial subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Any objection?
No objection.
Very good. Sir, you may step down. Thank you. If you'll go with the authorities. You may. Could you approach You may. And for transport purposes, this takes just a couple of minutes to get people where they need to be.